the general just told you. The Southern Poverty Law Center, in a massive, sweeping indictment, has been charged with allegations of fraud and using the banking system to perpetrate that fraud. I just want to talk about a couple brief things here. The Southern Poverty Law Center themselves advertise to raise money to dismantle violent extremist groups for a period of at least a decade. They use their donor network to raise money to purportedly dismantle violent extremist groups. However, the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, used the money they raised from their donor network to actually pay the leadership of these very groups. I just want to say that again. They used the fraudulently raised money by lying to their donor network, thousands of Americans, to go ahead and actually pay the leadership of these supposed violent extremist groups. The groups, as the general laid out, include the Ku Klux Klan, the United Klans of America, Unite to Right, National Alliance, the National Socialist Movement, the Aryan Nation Motorcycle Club, and the National Socialist Party of America, and also the American Front. In at least one of these matters, our investigation revealed that funds were used to facilitate the commission of further state and federal offenses, totaling over $3 million. Furthermore, our investigation revealed that the Southern Poverty Law Center, on top of perpetuating this widespread, decade-long, multi-million-dollar fraud, conducted more criminal activity. They attempted to hide their criminal activity from our financial banking network. They set up shell companies and entities around America so that the financial institutions that we rely on as everyday Americans were deceived in believing that money was not coming from the Southern Poverty Law Center in the perpetration of this scheme and fraud, but rather fictitious entities they stood up to perpetuate this ongoing fraud. This is a serious and egregious violation of a group that purported to dismantle violent extremist groups, but in turn actually only fueled the hatred. This is an important case brought by President Trump's administration. We're thankful for the president for his leadership and funding of not just the FBI and DOJ, but his commitment to go out there and wipe out fraud and conspiracy and waste and abuse wherever it occurs, including the Southern Poverty Law Center. Even though this money was made to appear to be coming from legitimate people and legitimate entities, we at the FBI, with our great partners at the Department of Justice and in the state of Alabama, were able to comb through a decade worth of material, a scheme that took a decade to build, so that we were able to follow the money, because money never lies, and they got caught. As the Attorney General said, these charges are varying, they are widespread and wide-ranging, and this investigation is very much ongoing. Today we're here to announce the charges of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and this investigation and the individuals who are responsible will be brought to justice. Thank you, General.
Thank you, Director Patel. With any questions?
I'd like to know why individual people are not mentioned in this indictment. Is that something that's going to come down the pike? Is this just an indictment of the entity? Can you kind of explain, could people face charges here, or is this the indictment and you're done?
So, yes, I mean, as we said, the indictment, this investigation is very much ongoing, and today the grand jury returned an indictment against only one entity, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and we'll go from there. But as you'll see from the indictment itself, it should be obvious from the indictment that the investigation is ongoing.
I just want to make sure I understand. You're alleging that the Southern Poverty Law Center was paying the leaders of KKK and other groups to continue their operations? Is that?
I'm not alleging it. The grand jury returned an indictment that says that. And so what the investigation found, according to the indictment that was returned today, is that they were paying. So the Southern Poverty Law Center is raising money, asking folks to give them money to dismantle racism, and over a very long period of time, they were using some of the money they raised from donors to pay to, they call them field, basically to informants, for information, for access, to just pay them for certain to do certain things, and so yes, that's exactly what the indictment charges.
I was wondering if this is going to expand perhaps to more groups. Perhaps there's been a lot of accusations about particular groups like the Patriot Front that get a lot of traction, and more so, is the government, or is this indictment, I should say, making the case that some of these matters where they've tried at great lengths to sort of make connections to people on the right, per instance. I mean, Charlottesville was very much associated by the media with being sort of like part of a right-wing kind of thing. They're like good people on both sides type of thing. I mean, are we seeing a sort of the Southern Poverty Law Center was trying to create narratives using these types of groups to shape American public opinion?
Look, I think what the Southern Poverty Law Center has said over the years is available for the world to see. It's on their website. It's in other forums. the indictment speaks for itself. I'm not going to talk outside the four corners of the indictment. It lays out what the grand jury found, and obviously there's a whole body of public information around what the Southern Poverty Law Center has done over the past several decades.
I mean, in some of these instances, these are groups that have been, either their membership has been dismantled or they've definitely fallen out of public view. I'm just wondering the legal theory of how, these payments allegedly went on to actually benefit the groups. Did you see money go to the groups themselves rather than just the individuals who were paid informants, essentially? And then I have an off-topic after.
So look, I want to be careful to keep any comments that we make inside the indictment. And so what the indictment lays out is payments to individuals who had leadership positions within these organizations. If that's what the grand jury found. And so to the extent that those individuals receiving, one received over $1 million, okay, to the extent over several years, to the extent that there's any link between that individual receiving the money and benefits to that organization, that's not in the indictment. But because again, it's not that individual who's charged with a crime. It's that individual was an informant or what have you. And it's Southern Poverty Law Center that made those payments to the individual, but it wasn't, look, the payments were not made to these individuals in exchange for a service separate and apart from their work within these organizations. So, that's I think speaks for itself.
Just on an off topic, obviously you've read the Atlantic article that's now a subject of a defamation lawsuit.
I absolutely did not read that article, but go ahead with your question.
I just, without, obviously it's up in litigation now, have you separately just heard any concerns given your supervision over the FBI director about any problems with drinking?
I have a lot of concerns, and my concerns are completely around the anonymous reporting that comes forth constantly. That reporters have an obligation to report, and they have due diligence that they're supposed to do. And when an entire article is based on anonymous sources, and there's things in the article suggesting, for example, apparently that senior DOJ personnel were informed of something. That's me. I wasn't informed. No one called me about that. So, listen, I did not read that article. It is a separate litigation, but I've already spent too much time talking about it. Next question.
On that, Todd, I'm sorry. The FBI director's on camera with the U.S. Olympic hockey team chugging a beer. I mean, do you think that that's appropriate conduct for the FBI director?
That has nothing to do with the article. I mean, look, there's complete hit pieces, and you guys are in this business, and you know what they look like, and the fact that you're asking repeated questions about them almost as an admission of such. But when you have a bunch of people who are hiding behind closed curtains, saying things but not willing to say it publicly, and there's certain parts of the article that are blatantly false because apparently I was told something that I wasn't, it's suspicious. Get in the back.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Attorney General. Can you explain again what the fraud is here exactly? Are you saying it's illegal for the SPLC to pay money to people that are in hate groups, or something about the way this was done makes it illegal? Because it's not automatically illegal, is it?
No, that's right. It's a good question. So, and again, I summarized the indictment, and it's now public for everybody to read. But the Southern Poverty Law Center is a 501c3. Okay, they're required to, under the laws associated with a nonprofit, to have certain transparency and honesty in what they're telling donors they're going to spend money on, and what their mission statement is, and what they're raising money doing. And so, as the indictment points out, there's different ways that they raise money, and in no fundraising efforts that the investigation found did they say, oh, and by the way, we're going to give $1 million to the Ku Klux Klan. So that's fraud. So that's wire fraud. So, and then the bank fraud part of it is you have KYC. You have an obligation to tell your financial institution what the corporation or the entity that you're opening an account for does. And the allegations in the indictment are that these were fictitious companies that were set up, and so there was certain information sworn to by SPLC executives about what the entities were doing that we allege is false.
Can I just follow up on? Can I have one follow up, Mr.
Go ahead.
On the hiring of Joe DeGenova to work for the department? Can you just tell us a little bit? I understand you went down to Florida, perhaps to take part in his swearing in or bring him on board. Can you explain why he's being brought back to the department after 40 years?
So, I mean, look, I think that everybody in this administration, whether it's Department of Justice or elsewhere, we're always looking for good people, and he's somebody who has a deep bench. As you said, he's been in this business for decades, and when we had the opportunity to ask him to join the team and help, we readily did.
I have an on-topic and an off-topic, if you'll allow me. Are you able to explain a little bit more about what led to this investigation? Were you guys tipped off by a former employee, or how did you guys discover this?
No, I can't talk about that, but it's been going on for a long time. There was a time that it was shut down for a while during the last administration. I don't know why, and it started again over the past year or so, and that brings us to today.
So you mean the investigation began before this administration and then was shut down during the Biden administration?
That's my understanding. I don't have information beyond what I just said around that.
I wanted to ask about the John Brennan investigation. If you can explain why the career prosecutor who had been leading that investigation was removed, and if you have or had concerns that investigation is not moving quickly enough.
I don't have any concerns about that investigation. And again, the reporting around that really is just a source purely from leaks and not actually accurate reporting is not something I'm going to comment on and never will comment on.
Could I ask you just to clarify one thing? Obviously, the Bureau had a long relationship with the SPLC. Is it your understanding that the previous leaders at the Bureau knew this was happening and didn't view it as a crime, or is that the Bureau did not know this was happening?
It is my understanding that SPLC never told anybody in law enforcement that they were paying off the Ku Klux Klan, and I don't think that should surprise anybody.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Attorney General. I'd like you to both weigh in on a recent memo from the Office of Legal Counsel declaring the Presidential Records Act unconstitutional, so saying that presidents no longer need to preserve their documents or return them to the government. What do you say to critics who suggest this basically eliminates transparency and accountability around how a White House operates, especially given how much time you guys were spending investigating the previous administration?
Well, look, I think there is no dispute that this administration in just 14 months has been a lot more transparent than the last administration or in any administration. So if critics are suggesting that somehow we're not being transparent, I don't find that credible in any way, shape, or form. As far as the recent OLC opinion regarding the PRA, that is something that has been heavily litigated in DC and elsewhere. And OLC issuing that is not the first, that's not the first place that you see that it's unconstitutional. I mean, I think there's a lot of places that you can go to think through why that is. The memo speaks for itself, and I don't have much to say about it beyond that.
Yeah. Do you want to weigh in on that?
The president has this pending billion-dollar lawsuit against the IRS. He sort of said that this is like he's negotiating with himself. How can you assure, is there anything you can do to assure the American people that taxpayer dollars are being protected? How are those negotiations being handled?
I'm most certainly not going to talk about ongoing litigation, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment about that case, given its status right now.
Broadly, with the various interests, the competing interests there, right? You have the president and the White House pressing, obviously, for some personal money, and then you have him being your boss. How do you sort of, just broadly speaking, how do you sort of handle that sort of issue?
We handle, the Department of Justice handles complicated decisions involving those type of issues every day, all day, and not just this Department of Justice. Every Department of Justice handles issues like that. I mean, you have decisions that an attorney general or his or her staff have to make that are difficult and complicated, and we do it. Attorney generals before me have done it, and we'll be able to handle it in an appropriate and ethical manner. Yep.
Thank you, Acting Attorney General. A question for you and then a question for the FBI Director. You spoke about the timeline of the investigation. I know you said you have not much more to say about that, but I am curious if you can talk about if it started in 2017, 2018, and just given what you said about the Biden administration turning it off, how is the Department of Justice ensuring this investigation remains free from political influence?
Well, I mean, look, it's free from political. There's nothing political about this indictment or this investigation. SPLC has lawyers, and if they think that I'm wrong about that, they're going to be free to make a motion in front of a judge like every other defendant in the country. As far as what I just don't know information that wasn't that far ago. It was within the past 4 or 5 years, but there was a decision made. I don't have any insight into why it was made to not pursue the investigation, and we started it again. And that brings us to where we are today.
Well, I do want to give you an opportunity to respond directly to the allegations in the Atlantic article that your unexplained absences created a national security risk. And beyond that, can you say definitively that you have not been intoxicated or absent during your tenure as FBI Director?
I can say unequivocally that I never listen to the fake news mafia. And as when they get louder, it just means I'm doing my job. This FBI director has been on the job twice as many days as every director before me. What that means is I've taken half as many days off as those before me. What that means is I've taken a third less vacation than those before me. What that means is that this FBI